Okay, welcome back to the Are You Strong show. I am really excited about today's guest. The big reason is because she is a UMaine graduate, fellow Maine Black Bear softball player on the show. Kya, I keep messing that one up, right?
That's
Yeah, but
okay. It's okay.
Kya Enos, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for
Thanks,
having
thanks
me.
for being on. It's great having another Maine Black Bear, on the
Yes.
show, and we can't have too many of them.
No, there's not many of us out there,
No,
so
no.
rare
So
crowd.
before I start asking you a ton of questions, why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what encouraged you to go to Maine, and where you're at now?
Sure. So, as mentioned, my name is Kya Enos. I did in fact graduate from the University of Maine. I played softball there for my 4 years. I graduated in 2018 with a bachelor's degree in sociology, kind of with my background being, criminal justice. I'm really interested in that, which is kind of where I am now. I work here in New Jersey. I actually moved to New Jersey a little bit ago to be with my boyfriend who coaches football at Rutgers University. So now I'm kind of like a transformed, but I'm still Maine at heart always. Um, but so I work in the criminal justice field. I work in the court system now. Um, lifelong athlete. Still like to tell myself that I'm an athlete because I don't think it ever dies in you.
Nope, never dies, never
Never
dies.
dies, never dies. So, but yeah, that's a little bit about myself. And
And
I'm
you're
really
from
excited to be here.
Massachusetts, right?
I am, yes, sorry, I'm from Massachusetts. I'm from about 40 minutes south of Boston,
Okay.
this little city called Taunton, Massachusetts. A lot of people, if they know where Taunton is and I tell them that, they're like, "Oh, wow, you're from Taunton?" And I'm like, "All right, you're okay."
Now,
Not the best.
what town is that near? I know a couple different
Let
towns up
me
there.
see. It is closer, honestly, to Providence, Rhode Island. It's
Okay.
probably like 20 minutes from like PC, Providence College.
Yep.
Um, it is, let's see, like Fall River area. I'm kind of far from the Cape, but I'm still like that coast,
Yeah.
southern East
Yeah.
Coast-ish. So yeah, like about 40 minutes south of Boston with no traffic. I mean, with traffic, that's a whole nother story.
Oh, sure. Without a doubt.
But same thing here in New Jersey. Traffic's crazy here. But yeah, so it's kind of I'd say it's very towny like in a way,
Yep.
but it's also not. And I think that it's tough for a lot of people to get out of there. So I'm, super grateful and blessed that I had the opportunity to just explore more than, where I grew up. So
Good. So how do you like being transplanted down here in good old New Jersey?
it's definitely been a transition. It has. I am a home girly. I love just my home base. Especially being with my mom. That's my best friend. Always has been. But she's like my home base, So it's definitely been tough kind of getting away from that. I mean, college was different because like you're distracted, you're with your friends, you're playing sports, you're doing school. It's like you don't even have time to miss anybody because you're so busy.
Yeah.
But I'm in like quote unquote the real world now and I'm working and I'm whatever. But it's definitely been a transition. There are a lot more people here than I think. Like it's very I don't want to say like overpopulated, but kind of. And Boston is crazy. Boston
Yeah.
is its own kind of whatever. But um, there's people. I go to the gym at like 5 in the morning, and there are people on the road. So
Yep.
like, there are
Oh,
people
yeah.
always out. I love the Jersey Shore. My boyfriend's family has a little condo down there, and that's like our little slice of
Oh, good.
peace and heaven in the summer. So that's
Good.
awesome. Um, bagels.
Eh.
Bagels here are no joke. We don't have bagel stores like that in
Yeah.
Massachusetts. So I've now been transformed to bagel girl from
Bagels and
a
pizza.
Dunkin' girl.
Yeah,
Bagels
bagels
and
and
pizza.
pizza.
I've had
Right.
some of the best pizza I've ever had here.
Yeah.
So sorry, Massachusetts, but
It's all about the water.
really
They say
good.
it's in the water. It's all about the water,
Yeah, that's,
you know?
I mean, I'm here for it because it is so good. And
Yeah.
the Italian food too. I mean, Boston is like, that's top tier in my end, like North End, but I've had some pretty good stuff here. So, but I enjoy
Good.
it. Overall,
So,
taking it all in account, I enjoy
so
it.
you'll stick around for a little while.
I think, well, I'd like to hope so. But the career of football coaching is one that is unpredictable.
Yeah,
So,
that's
but I
true.
might stick around myself,
Yep. Yep.
because I
All
could
right.
have my own career. So,
We'll see where it goes.
yeah, we will see.
So all the schools you could have gone to, played at,
Yeah.
what was the motivating factor to go up to Orono, Maine?
Um, the first thing that popped in my head when you said that was Mike Coots. Mike Coots was, when I was recruited, he was the head coach of the softball team. He is just such a good human. Honestly, it he really is one of, if not the biggest reason that I chose to go there, aside from the fact that, they offered me, a good amount of money to go and get my education, which was
Hmm.
extremely important to me and my family. Um, but he offered, I think, a culture, not only team wise, but just of who he is as a person, that I don't think I've ever experienced before. I've had, great coaches, life lesson coaches, the whole nine. But I think that the fact that I genuinely felt like from the moment that I met him or even spoke to him on the phone, that he genuinely cared about me as a human, right? So we go there as athletes, we go there as students, but I think that to find a coach that really values you as a human being and a person, is extremely important. And I genuinely felt that, which is really like the driving
Yeah.
factor of why I went. So
So,
yeah, my coots.
let me ask you a question around because that's
Yeah,
great. And a lot of the athletes that I've been interviewing, they always talk about their coaches.
yeah,
But here's the challenge that I always, or the question that I ask. You're 18 years old.
yeah.
Okay. You're not like we really don't, we can't really make great decisions at 18, right?
Mm-mm.
But it
Yeah.
sounds like you made a great decision. But how did you know at 18 that, that coach had the right culture and truly cared about you as not the player, but
Mhm.
the person? How did you figure that out at 18?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I don't really think I did. I think that it was a little bit of like I was getting super overwhelmed by the process. I was stressed out. I was like, I don't know. I have this belief that every athlete, and I could be wrong, I don't want to speak for anybody, but that every athlete at some point in their athletic career, whether it's you're like 5 years old or you're, playing the pros and you're older, you have a little bit of time where you're like, do I love this still? Like, this is
Mm,
getting tough. Like, this
yeah.
is a lot. This is overwhelming. Do I want to do this? Do I want to keep waking up at 6 a.m. and having no time to hang out with my friends? Like, do I want to do this? So I think that I was in that kind of like a rut type of deal. So Coach Cooch started recruiting me when I think I was like 16 or
Okay.
17. So I was probably either going into my sophomore year, I already was a sophomore in high school.
Yeah.
Um, and so he had reached out to me at first and I was like overwhelmed and I hadn't had a lot of offers at that time and I didn't really know what I was looking for, big school, small school. I just know that, I wanted to go and get my education and because that was a non-negotiable for my mom.
Oh, yeah.
I asked her when I was younger, if going to college was the law. And she told me that it was her law. So I didn't have a choice with that one.
That's the
So
only
anyway,
law you got to listen to.
yeah, exactly. She said it's my loss, so you will be going. And I said, okay, fair enough. So, yeah, I think it was kind of, I don't want to say a shot in the dark, but it was the first the first school and, visit and stuff like that, that I was like, okay, I feel like I could kind of see myself here.
Yeah.
Um, so, when I had ultimately made that decision, I think that partly, yeah, it was me being a little bit overwhelmed by the whole thing, the whole recruiting process, because
Yeah.
that's a whole nother conversation,
Yeah.
that's, honestly really evolved even from when I was being recruited. So kind of was a shot in the dark, but also like I said, having those conversations, my mom honestly was huge in the process. She was like a psycho about she had a binder of all the offers that I got and everything. And she would, write down all the questions that we wanted to ask and all the information and how long a coach was going to be there and what they had to offer
That's
academically.
awesome.
And yeah, she was about it. And, my mom, unfortunately, just because of her financial circumstances growing up, she wasn't able to go to college, but she's in college right now. So
Yeah.
woo, mom.
Really? All right. Now, was
Yeah.
she an athlete growing up too?
She played softball growing up. She was,
Okay.
she cheered and whatnot. Um, but when she, got mid high school, like, it became a matter of, she had to work to support the family.
Yeah.
So, she couldn't kind of afford to be playing sports because she needed
Yeah.
to help contribute. So, um, and like I said, neither one of my parents had the opportunity to go to college. So
Okay.
I think that for me, it was also like a pride thing for her. And this was kind of her way of like, okay,
Yeah.
well, I didn't get this opportunity and now Kaya does. So let's give her, let's get the full experience and everything that we can. So I'm super grateful for that because I wouldn't have really
Yeah.
thought to even ask certain questions that kind of led me to that point, but she she did her research.
Yeah.
She would help me write emails every weekend, going to tournaments. Yeah, she was no joke. So
Well, let
she
me let me ask you this question, and this is I'm sure you're gonna. Oh my God,
Mhm.
graduation from
Ugh.
college.
Mm.
How emotional was that for your mother?
Oh my gosh. So we actually unfortunately didn't get to walk. We were playing in Hartford, just the way the schedule
Yeah.
went out, which is fine, you know what I mean? But my mom and one of my best friends, Grace McGoldrick, our moms went to go, we were staying at a hotel in Hartford, and you know, they were like, all right, we're gonna have a meeting. Our teammates were like, all right, we're gonna have a meeting in the lobby. And we were like, oh, what? Like a meeting right now? Like I'm all set. And we went down there and they had this like cute little celebration
Oh, that's
for
cool.
us. And yeah, it was awesome. It was really cute. But I think, my mom specifically, I think that for her, it truly was a representation of everything that she's instilled in me and everything that she's equipped me with throughout life, never mind, sports,
Yeah.
being a student, just as a human.
Yeah.
Because that's what I love to tell people. When I talk about my mom, I always tell people how, she's made me into such a great human. And I think
Oof.
that's simply because she's such a great human that, uh, whether she tried or didn't, it made its way down to me. So I'm super grateful for that. But yeah, it was super emotional. My mom made absolutely every single, I don't think she missed one single game my senior year.
Wow. Really?
She traveled everywhere. We went to Utah for our spring trip. That was like 14 days, 2 weeks. This woman was in Utah. She drove, flew, you name it, she was there. So she did absolutely everything in her power. She was saving up, to be able to do that for me. And it was absolutely awesome. And I don't know. It's something that I'll literally
That is
never
so cool.
forget.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So to say you're
it's
never gonna
just,
forget that.
yeah, it's just like in me.
Yeah.
And
Well, you
it's
know what?
just,
Someday, should you choose to start your own family,
right.
you'll probably do the same thing she did.
Yeah. And she tells me all the time that when I'm ready, if that time comes, that she'll be there at every single game. I'm like, okay, I don't doubt it.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah. Yeah.
So
She's
so
she's the best friend.
sports. How old were you when you started? And what inspired you to play sports? I mean, because obviously you played at a very high level.
Yep.
Not
Yep.
everybody does that.
Yeah.
A fraction of college or high school athletes get to play at any college level, let alone
Yeah.
Division 1. So what was the inspiration to get out there on the field when you were a kid?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I don't really know. I don't know if my parents were just like, oh, she's tall and lanky and she's quick and has energy, so like let's just throw her into a sport, or if I expressed some sort of like, oh, well, I really want to play that. Because I do remember wanting to do certain things, like I wanted to do dance and I wanted to cheerlead, and then I remember getting into dance, doing it for 2 weeks, and I said, I'm not doing this. And my mom said, yes, you are, because we paid for it.
You're gonna
So if
quit.
she's like, you're not gonna quit. Yeah,
Yep,
that's
yep.
exactly what it was. She was like, mm-mm, we're not done. You paid for it and you're gonna finish it whether you like it or not. So I did.
All right.
Um, but I think it was, yeah, I don't really know if there was one specific thing. Like I can't remember if it was me being like, oh, I want to really play this, or if it was my parents just kind of trying stuff out. I think it was a little bit of both.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I did a whole bunch of stuff. Did the soccer thing, and that wasn't I played basketball. I did quite literally, I feel like everything that you can think of. And then, it came a time where it was, okay, Kaya, it's getting serious. You got to narrow it down a little bit. Um, you know,
Now, how did you know softball was the sport?
I go back and forth about this because in another life, field hockey is my other
Okay.
sport in another life. But I think softball for me, it honestly, it brought so much to my life that I knew, like, even at a young age, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you're good. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're so good. You're gonna go so far. But I think that I knew from when I was younger that this is something that I almost feel like I kind of like instinctually was good at. Like it was like in my nature or something.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like crazy to believe, but I genuinely believe that. It just was like my instinct to be a softball player. And that contributes to my whole process of like how I know the game and how I like to learn the game. And a lot of how I played was very instinctually and not, strategic and methodical. That's just who I was not as a player. Um, so yeah, I think that, you know, something in me. I'm not quite sure what it was. I'm not sure if it was that I was willing. I think part of it was I was willing to put time in. I was, it was freezing cold out. My mom has like pictures and videos of me that she will keep until the day she dies about, me being out with like a bow net and it's freezing cold out because, I had a bad game or she was there with me. We'd go after or stay after a game. Um, when you're young and like everyone wants to pitch because it's fun. She would put on, like catch because I was a catcher. She would put on my catcher's gear and catch for me, or she'd stay and do her best to soft toss or put balls in the tee for me. So I think that I was willing to put the work in, and I
Yep.
knew that okay, this meant something because I really want something out of it.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that pretty much is why I knew it was like my thing.
And you were a catcher.
I was. So I was a catcher actually literally my entire life from the moment that I started playing softball because my dad did in fact coach me when we first started playing when I was probably 5 or 6. And I was in the outfield and classic like every other little girl, at 5 or 6 playing softball. You're picking the dandelions. You're out
Yeah.
there. You're like do 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 do.
Yep. Yep.
Not to go. And my dad was like, "You're not doing that, girl." He was like, "You need to be in it. Like I feel like you have too much to offer." And one day I got like thrown behind the plate and I absolutely fell in love with it. And it's a position like no other, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And then unfortunately I got to my freshman or sophomore year. I think my sophomore year of college, and I had suffered like my maybe at that point fourth concussion
Really.
from catching. Yeah, and then my athletic trainer Orla and like my neurologist and the team doctor like we made the decision that okay, this just isn't something that I should probably do anymore. And honestly, as much as I missed it and I, loved it, um, the team didn't need a catcher at that point. We had a great catcher, Keely Clark. She was one of my roommates, best human. But my services were more needed, my abilities were more needed in the outfield, and I was okay with that.
Okay.
I was cool with that. So then I
Yeah.
learned outfield. I had briefly played outfield here and there throughout my career, more so as like a, okay, Kaya, you're quick. Go out there and just catch a ball. And I was like, okay. But I had to learn it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was college. It wasn't
Yeah.
like, okay, you can stand out there and pick dandelions.
Yeah. Right.
It was you're getting all the action.
Yep.
So, yeah, I caught up until my sophomore year, I think, the very
Okay.
beginning of my sophomore year of college. Yeah.
Now those concussions, they come from collisions at the plate?
Yes and no. So my first one, I was a freshman in high school. I was learning to hurdle for the first time.
Okay.
Is brutal. It was really brutal. We were indoors because I, would only do winter track because I was playing field hockey in the fall and then obviously softball in the spring. Um, my footing just, I was trying to learn to like three step. My footing was off completely, just like clipped the hurdle. And when I tell you like smacked my face
Oh,
on the hardwood floor, like bruised. It
oh
was,
man.
and I didn't really even know what a concussion was, because I feel like it kind of wasn't as big of like a topic and
Yeah.
as important as it is now. And granted, that was only in like I was probably 2015, so that long way, come a long
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember being like, whoa, what's going on? So, I was super close to my high school athletic trainer. She's one of the people who I will call to this day if I need anything. She's just such a good human. And she was like, I don't know. I think we got to put you on like a little concussion watch. And I was like, what? Um, so there was that one. The second one, I'm pretty sure came from field hockey, my senior year of high school. I was tripped up. Um, and just like really hit my head on the turf somehow and I like lost consciousness. That was like a whoa moment.
Yeah.
I remember like waking up and I was like, I saw my mouth guard in my mouth and I was like laying on the field and it was like dead silent. And my mom was like over me, like on like straddling me, like on top of me. And she's like, you're never playing field hockey again.
Yeah.
And I will never forget those words coming out of her mouth because I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I started bawling.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, like what? So of course, like I didn't know what happened. I was so confused. Um, so there was that. There was one time I was on a jet ski and we hit like the wake of a boat and I just got absolutely tossed. And I think that from the jarring of just my
Yeah.
head hitting the water, there was that. Um, Let me see. There's probably another one. Where's the
So
other? Oh,
nothing from softball though.
no, no, except for one.
Okay.
actually, that's not true. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, I've had a lot. I've had way too many to the
You
point
can't
where we've
remember
had
them all.
discussion. Yeah, where we've had the discussion of like, okay, Kaya, should you continue to play sports? So we've had that conversation, unfortunately, m more times than I can count. Um, some have been for softball. There was one, I think, when I was in high school, maybe right before that senior year one. So in my junior year, I was diving in the outfield.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not quite sure. But anyways, the last one that really did it,
All right.
I was catching, we were indoors in the dome at Maine,
Yeah.
just practicing. One of our outfielders who graduated me, Brianna Neely, one of the fastest people I've ever met in my life. She was slapping. We were just doing like live, live BP. She was slapping and, the ball just kind of, a foul back and it just got me like right in
Right
the
leg.
right
Yeah.
spot with I had my helmet on and everything. I was fully
Yeah.
suited up. But I was just like super disoriented and like I was like, whoa. So, it of course progressed itself to be, it's like you get one brain. I
Yeah. Yeah.
used to tell me that all the time. You get one brain. So it's like if
Right.
you keep, putting force on that, like it's not really healing itself. So
Yeah.
that was the determination of like we sat down, the coaches, myself, my athletic trainer Orla, um, and the team doctor, the neurologist, and we, just kind of made the determination like, is the risk really worth the
Yeah.
benefit in this situation? And the answer for that was no. And I'd already been, primarily playing outfield. I don't think I ever even actually like physically caught in a University of Maine game. I always was in the outfield. I was just kind of catching
Okay.
bullpens my freshman
Yeah.
year to help out. Um, so yeah, I was cool with it.
Yeah.
It sucked a little bit, but I was cool with it. I was I understood that my job, the team needed me somewhere else, and for my own health, basically, it benefited me as well. So I was okay with that decision.
So what about other injuries? Anything else, or
Yeah, yeah.
you got a laundry list?
Yes and no, not really. I'd say my senior year was probably the toughest. I had no, I'm sorry, my senior year of high school, I fractured my foot,
Mm.
which I think was from playing field hockey, just consistently pounding the turf in cleats that were just probably not good for my feet. It's a sport where you're running, and it was a sport that there were no subs. Kai was playing the whole game. I was playing the full 60 minutes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely took a toll on my feet. And catching, your toes are up in that like, you're on your toes the entire time
Yep.
in cleats, which, I don't know. Maybe since I've graduated, they've come up with some better footwear, but they need to do better because
More
maybe
flexible.
it's yeah, something more comfortable because geez. Um, so I'm sorry, we were talking about the
Injuries.
injuries. Yep. So fractured my foot senior year of college, was in a boot. It was fine. I was ready to go come preseason of high school softball. Um, Freshman year comes around, it's like still a persistent issue. I did also have knee surgery my sophomore year of high school, but it was something kind of like minor. I had had like a tear in my quad tendon. They just needed to get it was like affecting the tilt
Yeah.
of my like patella. Yeah. So, anyways, um,
You had a
long
lot of
story,
stuff.
yeah, yeah. Long story short, I have this issue with my foot. And like I see doctors and like I don't really know what's going on with it. Like you kind of got to pain manage. Um, but I actually figured out when I got out of school because it continued to be an issue. So they told me I could do surgery and maybe have it figured out when I was a senior. And I was like, "Ugh, why would I do that? Like, I'm trying to play." So I would, take off my shoes, immediately ice, but it was tough. Anyways, so I get out of school, I go and my, foot specialist is like, oh yeah, girl, like your sesamoid bone, which is like this little bone that kind of like sits or like floats under like the ball of your foot kind of.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
She's like, yeah, that's been fractured for a while. And I was like, what? So I don't know if that's something that never healed or something. Well, it definitely never healed, but I don't really know when that happened. Long story short, I had surgery. They took it out. I had surgery last July, so July of 2022. No, 23, July of 23. Um, yeah. Okay. And then ended up having surgery for again in January
Oh my
because
God.
yeah, still an issue. And now I have like a screw in there, which is fine. But um, yeah, so it was a little tough mentally, I think, because I was constantly. I
Yeah.
also like there was a time where we were playing UMass, I caught a ball and like my elbow. There's like the picture's awful, but um, I was in like a sling for a little bit, and then I had to wear like the elbow guard. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that was I injury prone? 100%. I think that it attributes to a lot of things. Mostly I play with no regard for my body.
That's the problem.
Yeah, I had no regard for my well-being, the well-being of my body. Like I
Yeah.
just, but that was something that everyone knows. Everyone knows
Yeah.
that about me. It is who I am. I will throw myself if it means that if I have even the smallest chance of catching a ball.
Yep.
And that's how I play. And honestly, I believe that if I tried to minimize that, diminish that, I would hurt myself more. So, so be it. But yeah, oh, jeez. Yeah.
And here you are now.
And here I
And
am.
all
Here I
multiple
am.
surgeries and all healed up.
Yeah, here I am wearing my sneakers to the courthouse every day.
Yeah.
But you gotta
Yeah.
do what you gotta do.
So
Gotta do.
let's go back to Orno
Mm,
for a second, and you're up there for a number of years.
yeah,
What's the most memorable moment for you up there?
this one's a tough one. Um, I want to pick a positive one because I feel like I have some ones that are like, not, I don't want to say like life changing, but definitely we're like, okay, Kaya, this is like a big point in your life moment. I honestly would say one of like the best moments that I can think of in my mind is my graduating class. There were, I think, 10 or 11 of us, 10 of us, I think, which is like the biggest class in like UMaine softball history. We, all got together. We took pictures in front of the M in the New Balance building.
Yep.
Um, and I don't know. I think for me, it was just like wow, like I came in with these girls 4 years ago because none of us left. We all stayed, which is also kind of crazy to think
Yep.
about. Um, and like here I am with these same girls 4 years later. We're about to graduate. We're all about to have our education, our degrees. We're all about to go off into like separate lives and careers and create like new beginnings for
Yeah.
ourselves. But we just truly came so far individually and with one another that was kind of like wow, like here we are taking pictures together and like our dresses and our cap and gown
Yep.
and whatnot. So I think that was definitely like a wow, like this is it. This
Yeah.
is like what you dream of.
You blink your eye and
Really.
it's
So
over, right?
yeah,
It's
which
like,
is
oh my,
that oh yeah.
goes quick. You feel like you just showed up as a freshman, then all of a sudden, hey, we're graduating. It goes
Seriously.
quick.
And everyone tells you that when you're a freshman, when you're younger,
Yep.
but someone probably could have told me that every day and it still would have felt like, whoa, like, is this really happening?
Yeah.
Because you don't think about it. You really
No.
don't. You're just kind of, going at the beat of the drum and flying by.
Yeah.
So,
So that's your most memorable moment.
yeah.
What do you think was your most challenging moment up there?
Ooh.
And don't tell me it was eating Pat's pizza.
I'm not I don't want Pat's Pizza. I didn't hate it. They used to have a deal on calzones. I would get them. They're not bad.
All right.
But I would say my most challenging moment was specifically if we're talking about like a very specific moment. Um, I think that so when I don't know, because this one's kind of a toss up. I think that I think of it as a challenging moment then, but now I'm like, wow, this was really powerful for me. But I think it's important to talk about. I will never forget, it was my first year in season. So we're in second semester. It's probably 2019 at this point because I'm in my freshman year. We're in season. Um, I was taking a statistics class. I'm not good at math. It's just not my thing, never has been. But it was a requirement, had to do it. And I don't know what was going on then. I don't really know if there was something that like specifically triggered me that day or what it was. But I remember just kind of sitting in class and feeling like I was uh, like watching myself from a different perspective. Like I was like outside of my body or something. And I was like, wow, I'm miserable right now.
Mm.
I'm struggling in school. I don't want to be in this class right now. I could cry. I want to play because I wasn't playing at the time. We were maybe a couple weeks into the season. I missed home. My grandmother was extremely ill. My mom was taking care of her, and that was kind of weighing on me. Um, and, I was getting in trouble. I had a tough time, at Maine, kind of at first. I was figuring out, you know, kind of who I was and whatnot, and not in good ways. And I remember texting my athletic trainer Orla and being like, I can't do this anymore. I gotta be out. Like I gotta go. Um, and she was like, all right, leave class. She's like, as much as I don't want you to leave class, just get up. And then so I sat there for probably 20 minutes, just thinking in my brain, like, do I get up right now? I can't take this. I'm gonna cry. Literally started crying. I had to get up and leave at that point because I was like, people are gonna see me. I'm embarrassed. I was like disheveled. I was a mess.
This was
Um,
your freshman year.
I was a freshman. Yep,
Oof.
my freshman year. We'd probably only been back for a couple months at that, or not even, maybe a month or two at that point from winter break.
Yeah.
Um, and I went to her office and shut the door, and she was like, we need to get you help. And I was like, I don't want help. I don't want anything at this point. This is so ridiculous. Like, I'm so
Mm.
overwhelmed. I can't take it. And she was like, no, no, no. We're going to get you help. We're going to figure this out. Um, and at first I was just like, okay, yeah, we're going to get me help, whatever. Um, but Orla quite literally went through every single leap and bound that she probably possibly could have went through and more,
Yeah.
um, to get me help, whether it be like, academically. I did testing, I did so many different things. But I think that that was the most challenging moment for me because I think it was almost like okay, I feel outside of my body and I'm seeing myself struggling, like for real. Like
It's
I
like an
was
anxiety
really,
attack, right?
yeah, like I just was so confused. I kind of didn't really even know what was going on.
Yeah.
I was like, I just got to get out of here. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what's going on. Like I'm not doing well in class. Um, yeah, it was rough. It
Yeah.
was a little challenging. But that was probably like the moment right there that I would
Now,
think
how did
of.
you overcome that?
Um, it's a long process. It was long, very, very long. So right in that moment, like I said, I went to Orla. I think she had a conversation with coach at that time and just kind of got him up to speed on everything.
Hmm.
And they had kind of already been aware of the situation prior. But I think that I also was not doing a good job of expressing to them how I was feeling. I think that they were just kind of getting the consequences of my actions, and they were, rightfully so upset and disappointed with me of how I was
Yep.
behaving, or, representing the team or myself, or, even them for that
Yep.
matter.
Can I ask you a
So
question around that real
sure,
quick?
sure.
Because I talk to a lot of athletes, and the one thing I want you to know is you weren't alone, even though at that time you
Yeah,
felt you were alone. And
yeah,
so many athletes have told me, oh my God, it's very similar stories.
yeah.
And what they were feeling at the time, I'm not saying this is you, but maybe
Mm,
if you can tell me a little bit if you're open to it, is they were almost afraid to tell somebody about it.
yeah.
And it could for worry of what the other person might think.
Yes. Which also is crazy to hear you say that. Because you've spoken to so many athletes, former athletes, current, whatever, that we're so similar in so many
And
ways.
you're supposed to be these tough people that can take
Right,
anything.
right.
Right.
And
You're
you know,
human.
we're human beings,
Right.
and that is one of the most important things that I encourage and hope that people realize going forward, about every athlete, whether they actively struggle with mental health or not, or, they're great one day and not the next, that we're human beings. We're, still got to wake up every morning and live our lives like, maybe not like everybody else, but
Not even close.
um, yeah.
Not even close.
Maybe not like
No,
everybody else,
no,
but
no, not even
we're still
close.
human, we're
Yeah.
still, oh, geez, I dropped my
The
headphone.
the other college students, not no disrespect to them, right?
Mm. Hmm.
They're not getting up at 5 in the morning. They're
Nope.
they're getting up at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, or maybe
Yep.
not at all because they have no class that day. And
Hmm.
they're hanging out they go to class for 8 hours a week, and the rest of
Yep.
the week they have off.
Yeah. I used to literally think to myself, like, what do you guys do in your free time?
Yeah.
Or like, don't tell me you're tired.
Yeah.
Which, not trying to minimize that,
Right.
but yeah, it's you don't want to speak up, I think, simply for the fact that it's unknown, right? So I tell people one of my biggest fears in life is the unknown. And I feel like that's probably everybody's, to
Yeah.
some extent, biggest fear is what you don't know. And my mom always tells me, Kaya, what you don't know is simply just a mere matter of figuring it out. But anyways, so I think that, this fear of explaining or telling, or, you don't really know what's to come of it. Are they going to bench me? Are they going to think differently of me? Are they going to not give me as much credit? Are they going to think that I'm not going to work hard because I'm struggling, or,
Right.
that I'm not taking care of myself, or that I'm not capable of, putting my head down and working hard at practice, or up at that at bat when it's 3-2 and, we need that run to come in, or, um, so I think that, yeah, when you put it out there and it's really like, whoa, like that's so true, is you don't really know what's to come of it if you're fully vulnerable. And
Yeah.
I use that word, and I've always used that word a lot because I've truly learned in my time as an athlete, and especially in my time at Maine, is vulnerability is so important. It really, really is. And it's hard, and it's easier said than done. And, I still struggle with it to this day, being vulnerable. But like you said, we have this image that's kind of already created for us before
Oh
we
yeah.
even get to create our own image.
Yeah.
Um, you know, oh, you play sports, you got to this level, especially you're playing, D1 collegiate sports, like, oh, like,
You're tough.
okay, yeah, you're
Yeah.
tough. You can handle this.
Yeah.
Um, and it's as much as that, you take pride in that, right? Because there
Yeah.
is a lot of pride in that. There's a lot of pride in being like, wow, people expect a lot of me, and that's really cool. But it also is really, really hard. It is
Yeah.
something that I don't think at least myself, I know that I can't explain it until you experience it. Um, and it's, you can say, oh yeah, it's hard. And, people expect a lot of me and sometimes it can get tough, but until you're in it
Yeah.
and, everything that you've worked for has come down to that moment where it's like, you got a full count and there's a runner on third, and this game kind of determines whether you're going to the championship or whatever, or you really need this win, or um that's kind of when you start thinking of all those things, like, all right,
Yeah.
am I tough? Am I going to meet these expectations? Am I going to do what my teammate needs? And we're human, and it's so hard to just it's thinking about it is just like, wow, because you like almost like relive
Yeah.
some of like your thoughts, like while you're in the moment, while you're in the box, while you're in the outfield.
Yeah.
um so yeah, it's
But
powerful.
it's pressure,
Yeah,
and
and
it's
no
like
joke.
it's expectations
Hmm.
of others. Everybody's expecting something
Yeah,
from you,
yeah.
but then it's the pressure that you're put under,
Hmm.
and but the expectation is you're going to perform under that pressure.
Yep.
And when you don't, sometimes you don't,
Right.
and you carry that. But what's really cool though is when you do,
Yeah, it is.
it's like that's like wow.
Yep,
You know
sure
what I mean?
is. And then, you're talking about pressure and like, that we feel from others. I truly believe that I also am one of the biggest factors of pressure on myself. And most they say that most great athletes are. And
Yeah.
I think that that's necessary to some extent, right? But what is the threshold for that? Where can we find a healthy balance for that? We did a drill one time where we were just doing BP, kind of I don't think it was middle of the season, probably right before, so middle preseason. We did a drill. You had to say out loud what you were thinking in your head as you were going through like a live at bat.
Really.
It was like,
So if you were
whoa.
thinking about a movie, you got to talk about that.
Yup. Like it was just, you're up there and you're just like, whatever's in here, you're just spitting it out. And it was so interesting to me because you could truly see
Yeah.
how different people talk to themselves,
Yeah.
how, you self speak, or, how, whether you're positive or not, or how you, refer to yourself or anything like that. And it was just so interesting because, you know, girls would it was just the difference in how each of us spoke to
Yeah.
ourselves and what we would say is just absolutely mind-blowing to me. It was really cool. But it also was very eye-opening because I was not very nice to myself at all. 'Cause, you're hard on yourself. Like you said, you expect what, if not more, of what others expect of you. Um, but yeah, that was a really cool drill, honestly. And it kind of like opened my eyes to wow, we put so much on ourselves, whether it's what we grab from others or what we're just, mustering up inside of our own brains. But again, back to the point, like we're human beings. And like you said,
Yeah.
when it pays off, awesome.
Oh, yeah.
But the biggest challenge is what do you do when it doesn't pay off?
Right.
What's that next step? What's that that adaptation, that
Yep.
change in adversity? Like what are you going to do to face that adversity? So that's the next challenge that you're faced with, which is also not easy.
Yeah. Well, it's you're reading my mind because that's the next question I want to
Yeah.
ask you is, well, how did you balance the pressure
Hmm.
of sports, academics, being away from home,
Hmm.
social life?
Yeah.
The people don't understand what goes on in a college athlete's head because you're going 7 days a week.
Hmm.
There's no downtime. There's
Nope.
no break. And how did you handle all that?
Yeah. It took me a while to figure it out. Because, like I had mentioned, my freshman year was rough. I was figuring out the transition. That transition from high school to college is like no other.
Oh yeah.
I don't care how prepared you think you are. I don't care how good of an athlete you are. It is everyone's own individual experience, and it is something that you learn as you go. Um, like I said, no matter how prepared you are.
Yeah.
But I think that once I finally figured it out, um, that balance simply was for me, honestly, if I were to really narrow it down, a routine. Um,
Mm,
a routine for me, I also have like super bad ADHD, so a routine for me is like imperative. It is quite literally how I function to this day. We used to have these things called 168 plans, which at first I remember being like, what? You mean to tell me that I have to write down every single thing that I'm doing from the minute that I'm doing it to the time that I'm waking up to going to sleep to going to eat to driving to practice? And I was like, oh, this is so ridiculous. But then as I learned to appreciate that whole 168 plan, they would be due every Sunday by a certain time. We'd have to send them in. Um, and it literally was for these 168 hours in this week, how are you going to manage your time? When are you going to study? When are you going to sit down to eat? When are you going to take a shower? When are you going to, maybe go get some extra work in? Maybe when are you going to go and hang out with your friends?
yeah.
So that even though I really was just like, I'm not doing this in the beginning, I learned to really love it and appreciate it, because it literally laid everything out for me. And I ended up taking like pride in it. Like I would like pick certain colors and whatever, but um it really allowed me to be like, okay, this is my routine. I know what I have to do on, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it didn't matter if we were traveling, it didn't matter if we had had a long night, they were due. So um I knew that that was the one thing that I was like, okay, this will help me keep me on track. But um, back to the whole routine part is it what in my opinion, when you have a routine, it truly is like once you get it down,
Hmm.
um, and really kind of master that routine, it's natural. I've been reading the book Atomic Habits, which
Yeah.
has been
Great
like
book.
super awesome, so good. I'm still working on it, but so good. So now that I think about it, I would do, certain things like they talk about triggers and cues and, whatnot in that book.
Yep.
Um, I would have different things to trigger. So, if I knew we used to have my senior year, we would have 6 a.m. lift on Tuesdays, in and out of season. So I knew that Monday night, I used to have a late class Monday night. I knew that as soon as I was getting home, I was showering, eating, immediately getting to bed. I would put out what I was going to eat. My thing always was like an English muffin with butter and cream cheese and a juice box. Um, So I would like prompt myself, okay, when I get up in the morning, I would set my clothes out. I still do that to this day. I set my clothes out for work. I set my clothes out for the gym. I, turn even like as far as like the heat on in my car so that I know that when I start it up in the morning, it'll be good. My toothbrush, so I had to learn that aside from the routine, I had to set myself up for success. And
Mm,
I think a lot of most of my life, up until I really figured that out, was a lot of me just kind of hoping, wishing, and praying that I was going to figure it out. Um, and eventually I came to the conclusion that, like, this isn't really working for you, girl. You got to figure something else
yeah.
out. And that was part of, what I worked on a lot with Orla and my coaches. Was it like, I have the tools. I'm blessed enough. I went to a Division 1 school. Was it the biggest school? Absolutely not. But I felt like I received everything that I needed to be successful. So, I had a mentor, Haley Perry, now Perkins. She was my mentor. She kept me on track. I would go over her house, study. We'd get food together. We'd go out together. So it was like, okay, this is one person who I know that like she's got me on track. She can keep me on a schedule. She's been there, done that. She's experienced different things. There's that. There's another girl. We'd call her Lo. She was a senior when I was a freshman. Absolutely one of the most influential people in my life to this day. Haven't really talked to her in a while, but I feel like now that I'm mentoring her, I'm like, all right, I gotta reach out because she's
Caller.
just such a good human.
Yep.
So really gotta reach out to her. But so grounding yourself with those people as well, they kind of help provide that balance. Um, so it's tough. It really is. For me personally, if I had to sum it all up, it really would be finding out a plan, a routine, and the tools that work best for you to succeed and be efficient because every single person is different. I need to read things over more. I need to rewrite notes more. Someone else maybe can be in class, they have a test the next day. They don't need to review anything. That's cool. But maybe you need to do a hitting drill a couple more times to really get it. But I might not need to do that hitting drill, but you do because that's
Yeah.
what works best for you.
Yep.
Some people might not really refer to the 168 plan because they don't like it. They don't like that structure. I need that. They don't need to set out their clothes because they figure, oh, I know what I'm going to wear. Okay, well, I need that. So every single person is different, and I encourage everybody to figure that out, and it takes time. Be patient with yourself. It's just like if you're trying out, a new medication or you're trying out something new. You've got to give it time and allow it to develop and, allow yourself to kind of adapt to certain things. Like going to the gym in the morning. Oh my gosh, that was rough for a while. Like I would like literally sit up and I'd be like fighting with myself. And now it's like, okay, Kaya, like I know that my cue and like my trigger is like put your feet on the ground. Put your
Yeah.
feet on the ground.
Yep.
Because like if I'm up, then like
You're up.
all right, why would I get back in bed? I'm already up. So different things that you can find for yourself that make life easier. Because that's really what it is
Yeah.
making, because we all have tasks, right? We all have obligations and responsibilities and things that require our time and attention, but how can we best find the most effective and successful and comfortable, because that too,
Yeah.
comfortability and being okay with what you're doing and comfortable doing it is so important. So, maybe it's not a
Great.
routine for you, but maybe it's you say, all right, I'm gonna have a, cup of tea at night. Find something to do for yourself that
Yeah.
keeps you grounded. So
That's
and
great. And
balanced.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. Awesome advice. Now, again, it's amazing how you're answering these questions and what you're saying, because my next question is, okay, you got a high school softball player, lacrosse player, field hockey player, soccer player, whatever, basketball player, has aspirations of being you, going to college, playing Division 1,
Mm-hmm.
but she's nervous. She's
Mm-hmm.
worried. She's kind
Mm-hmm.
of intimidated. Whatever, you could line up all kinds of stuff because, like you said, you don't know what it's like until you show up your freshman year, day one, and you
Yep.
think you got it under control, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, these girls they're better than me. They're just as good as me. I,
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was going to be the own this place, and now all of a sudden, whoa! And then
Mm-hmm.
all, like you said, all these things you got to do. What advice can you give the young girls coming, or guys, coming out of high school, about preparing for
Mm.
what's in store for them?
Yeah, yeah. I think that, because that's the biggest thing about college sports, honestly, is everyone's kind of the best of the best where they're coming from.
Hmm.
Everyone's like the top dog, you're all the talk, Gatorade Play of the Year, whatever, that's all cool, but
Yep.
so is everyone else now. And that's tough for a lot of people. Some people don't play right away, and that's tough to grapple with. Or like you said, like some people, maybe come in a little bit skillfully better than others, or whatever that case may be. So I think that for me, um, what I would suggest, or kind of anything that I would offer up for anyone who is nervous or is kind of unsure or just like, all right, I don't really know what to expect. Um, allow yourself to be in it. I know that it's kind of vague, but and it's I don't want to say corny because it's so repetitive and whatever, but simply to be where your feet are and to really just, if possible, because it's easier said than done, just simply take in everything that you have as a human being, right? So if you know you're great at X, Y, and Z, stick to that. Be like, okay, I know that I'm really good at studying on, certain nights of the week or whatever. Anything that you can use to ground yourself, essentially going into a situation that you're like, oh, I'm not really sure about or whatever, is important. Also, talk to people. If I had just talked more to not only even like coaches and whatnot, but just to my friends and my teammates, we have so much in common with one another. Um, More than I think we even really know for our own good. And I think that, whether it's mental struggles, whether it's struggling in class, whether it's struggling with, like dietary restrictions or eating or whatever it is, a social life, simply just kind of talking with, in my case, like with my girls, like I really feel like if I had done that when I was coming in, and 'cause I'm outgoing. That's who I am. And I was always like, we had our group of people and whatnot. And I felt like, okay, my friends and I'm cool and I'm figuring this out with them. But if I had really talked to them about the stuff that was maybe not so glamorized, those mental struggles,
Mm.
uh those tough days in the weight room when you're like, man, I just don't want to go, or relationships, whatever it is, those are your people. Those are your best friends. Those are, and again, you might have, so there were 22 of us my freshman year. Was I absolute best friends with all 22 of those
Oh, you
girls?
can't be.
Absolutely not. But were
Yeah.
they my teammates and I respected and loved them and would do absolutely anything under the sun for them? 1000%.
Yeah.
And once you feel that, like, okay, that's mutual, you're like limitless. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? All that nervousness and the unsurety, all of that for me went away because I was
Yeah.
like, all right, I got my army. Like I got my people behind me.
Yep.
I know that they support me and they love me and they encourage me. In any aspect, whether that's on the field, whether that's we're out somewhere at night and someone, like steps me and like I know they got my back, or whatever it is, no matter what the situation is, I think just having a group of people or like a support, and that's the biggest thing. Like college sports, you don't
Yeah.
get that if you're like an average college student. You
No.
don't get 22 best friends
No.
just, you
No.
walk in and to move in, you're like, oh hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
And for me, that was like one of the biggest blessings because I didn't really have that. You know what I mean? I was only child growing up. Um, like yeah, I was close to some of my teammates, but a lot of it too, when you get older, you're bouncing around from team to
Yeah.
team. You're on showcase teams, you're on
Yep.
older teams, you're playing for younger teams because you want to get more looks. But when you're locked in, and of course it changes from year to year, but when you're locked in with, that set of people,
Yeah.
um, that's where you got to immerse yourself.
Yeah.
That's where your feet have to be, taking everything in, learning what you can from, the upperclassmen, people around you. Everyone comes from different backgrounds, different ways of life,
Yeah.
um, which is also the coolest part about like going to Maine because, you know, just a mix of people. I've
A
met people.
whole
Yeah.
mixed bag out there.
Yeah. Like, everyone's from all over the country and
Yeah.
it's awesome. And you're kind of in this your own little world up there.
Yeah.
Um, and finding peace in that is huge when you're kind of unsure and nervous, so go for it, honestly,
Yeah.
in
Well,
my
I
opinion.
like what you said. Like it's your army,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they're in it with you. They're in it with you.
yeah,
As
we're
much
all.
as when you're there by yourself, right? You don't think they're in it with you
Mhm.
until you find out that somebody's got the same thing going on that you do.
Yep.
And then you're like, okay,
Hmm.
I get
And
it.
there's comfort in
Yeah.
that, big
Yeah.
comfort in that.
It's huge because now
Hmm.
you feel like you're not alone.
Right.
And most
Exactly.
most freshmen, by the time you're a senior, you think you got it under control, but sometimes you don't.
Mm.
But as a freshman, when you're alone for that first time, like you said, you dropped off, parents turn around, see you
Hmm.
later,
Mm.
and you're like, okay, you walk into your dorm or wherever you're at, and you're just like, okay, this is
Yeah.
reality now.
Yeah.
You know,
That's like a
it,
whoa.
yeah. Oh, it's huge.
It
It's
really does.
huge.
It really does hit you. And it's in some ways could be like super liberating for some people.
Yeah.
For others it could be really scary,
Yeah.
So again, everyone is completely different and
Yep.
everyone processes it differently. So anything that grounds you and keeps you kind of to who you are as a person is so important. So
Yeah. So let's fast forward now. Now you didn't graduate that long ago. It's not like you've
I
been out
did it.
for
It really does feel like it was so long ago, and
what
I
year
haven't
did you
even been
graduate? What
20
year?
2022.
Yeah, it's 2 years
Yeah.
ago.
Yep,
You
May of
know?
2022. Not
Yeah.
that far.
It's no. You could
Not
still
that
be
far.
playing up there and getting your master's degree or
Yeah,
something. Who
probably.
knows, you
Yeah,
know?
I yep.
So, well, let me ask you this. Okay, let's talk about what was the most challenging part for you, identity wise, personally wise, to transition out of college, out of sports.
Yeah.
How was
That
that?
was honestly one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I had been dreading it. I think from the moment that the thought of, okay, wow, softball's going to end at some point, popped in my brain. It'd be like kind of that little intrusive thought that would creep in every once in a while.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, uh, I genuinely feel like I lost my identity. Because that's who I was. I was an athlete. I was number 20. I was
Good number, by the way.
thanks. Thanks. Shout out my Cougs. I was the, UMaine center and left fielder. I was uh the senior leader. I was, the girl like making jokes at team dinners and stuff like that and like goofing around with everybody and but I was serious. So I think that for me, um it was tough in the sense that I also didn't really know what I wanted to do. I kind of was, some people are locked in. They're like, they're going for nursing, so they know as soon as they get out, they're taking that, that exam, and then they're immediately trying to get a job. But I don't think that's the case for everybody. I think that for to some extent, everybody has that like, all right, well, what am I going to do now?
Yeah. No.
Um, so, and to this day, I'm like, I don't really know what I want to do. But yeah, that identity shift was real. It was crazy. So first from like the physical perspective, like the, athlete working out, whatever. Um, my senior year, going into my senior year, put in the most work that I've ever put into that sport. I did not miss a day in the gym. I did not miss a day doing BP. I was working constantly. So physically, right, like I was pretty ripped. I worked hard. I pushed big weight. I was the strongest I'd ever been. Um, I for the most part had a good season other than a few little flaws mentally. And I think getting away from that, I was like, whoa, all right. So like, how do I get back in the gym? That took me a while, definitely a while.
Yeah.
Because lifting for me, just because I loved lifting with my teammates, there's something that I would pay billions of dollars to do to this day. Um, it is a feeling that I can't explain. It was
Yeah.
one of my favorite times of
Yeah.
the day, the week, the month, was getting that 1 hour of time to go in there, put in the work with your girls and just lift big weight, listen to
Yeah.
music, be crazy, work hard for one another, cheering each other on. So then I had to go to like a commercial gym and like live just on my own. I was like,
Yeah.
whoa, it's kind of
Yeah.
weird. How do I do that? So that also has been a big transition. I'm still figuring it out,
Yeah.
finding different things and whatnot, and thinking of workouts to do and creating my own plan and
Yeah.
whatever. Um, but I think from the mental, emotional, that kind of side of things, you almost feel like you lose your sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Um, and in any group, right? Whether it's, not to get this extreme, but like whether it's a gang, whether it's a church group, whether it's you have a sense of belonging, right? So
Yeah.
you feel
Yeah.
that sense of belonging. So being a
Connection.
part of a team, right? Being a part of a team is like no other. That
Right.
connection and that sense of belonging is like no other. So when, your best friend who you lived with and could literally just walk across the hall and open the door or drive 5 minutes to go hang out with them and just talk about, I don't know, whatever, go get food, that's gone. That's
Yeah.
stripped from you. And that is the hardest thing to process. And a lot of people I don't think know how to I didn't, and sometimes I still don't. I still think
Yeah.
about the game. I miss the game. I love the game. I miss my best friend and just doing things with them, going
Yeah.
to get food or ice cream or whatever it is. So I think my identity,
Go to governors.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We were big family dog people,
All right.
big family dog in the nest, big nest people. Um, so I think that my identity from being like, okay, athlete Kaya, number 20, you know, kind of life of the scene Kaya, transition to super driven, um, wanting to be successful, wanting to work hard, and kind of wanting to achieve everything that I've envisioned for myself thus far. Um, so, like I said, and like we talked about, that athlete mentality never dies. I don't care if we're having a competition to see who can like spit the farthest, I will win. Like, that competitiveness, that drive, all the characteristics of an athlete never die in you. I
Yep.
just, they never do, no matter
No.
what age, no matter they're
No.
just always there.
Your mind will always tell you go, but your
Yeah.
body will tell you no.
Exactly. Exactly. In your mind, also, I'm a firm believer that your mind stops you before your body does, which is one of the hardest
Yeah.
things to kind of manage and get over. Um, but yeah, it's one of the toughest things. But again, it's everyone has their own uh unique experience. So I, for a really tough time, had a really, really tough time with getting over the fact that I didn't stay another year. So I had a COVID year. I could have used my COVID year. And I ultimately made a decision not to. And that was super hard for me because I was like, is it a regret? Am I regretting it? Like, I don't know what to do. What do I do with myself? And ultimately, I think that I really just didn't want to leave school. I didn't want to leave college. I didn't want to leave the game. I didn't want to go out into the real world. And I told myself, like, okay, well, if I take this COVID year, then I don't have to. But now that I look back on it, as much as I missed the game and I would have loved to get another year in, I'm grateful for the way that everything has played out for me. I truly believe that God's timing, just in this case, is perfect, and what He intended for me is what's playing out. Um, so I just, I don't know. It's crazy to think about that. Yeah, I'm not that far removed,
No,
but it
you're
really
literally,
feel
you
like I
can
am.
count the months,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
But it's tough. It still
Yeah.
is tough.
Yeah.
I know for my
Well,
boyfriend it was super hard for him too. So
yeah.
it's very unique for everybody.
Well, how do you redefine your identity now? And that's
Yeah.
hard because I've talked to a number of people on the show, and some of them is like, I went into depression.
Mm,
I developed high anxiety trying to figure out what I'm
yeah.
going to do next.
Yeah.
But we all have to redefine our lives somehow, some way, somewhere, someday.
Hmm.
And again, you like I said, you can count the months you've been out of school, and maybe you're not there yet. But how are you redefining where you're at now?
Yeah, yeah. I think that honestly, my first thought about that is I've always had this lifelong, I don't know, belief or just something inside me that my biggest goal truly in life is to maximize my full potential as a human being in every single aspect of my life, career-wise, physically, mentally, spiritually, any way that I can fully maximize my potential as Kaya Enos, I will strive and work and do absolutely everything that I can to achieve that full potential. Now, do I expect to get to that full potential? Absolutely not, because I think that it's limitless. Um, I genuinely believe, and again, because my mom has instilled it in me, that I am absolutely capable of anything that I put my mind to. Would I believe that sometimes if I'm having a little bit of a tough day? Probably not. But um, overall, I, you know, I genuinely believe that my purpose in this life is to use the tools that I've been given from everything that I've experienced and everyone around me and what I've learned and whatnot, to reach my full potential and, ultimately help others reach their full potential. I think that's why I have such a passion for the criminal justice system and helping people rehabilitate themselves back into society because, you know, we all make mistakes. We are all human beings. We all are at different stages of life and different points and make different decisions for whatever reason. But that doesn't mean that, you are limited to your full potential. You're limited to that, to reach that capacity. So in my case, I struggle a lot with my mental health. I actually just got an assessment back that I completed probably, I think, 2 weeks ago. I went home in Boston, completed another assessment, um, and I like read it over today, and I was like, wow, like here I am, years later, like still struggling, but I'm figuring it out. I'm now,
If you don't mind, can you
yeah,
talk about that for a second?
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
of
that's a
course,
big part of this whole show here
yeah.
is the athletes, the mental struggles that they go through.
It's like no
And,
other.
and I think, you know, if you didn't grow up in sports and the pressures of it, you might not have as much as you have today.
Mm,
And that compounding effect of you're a little girl,
hmm.
expecting to perform. Then you
Yep.
become a little bit of a bigger girl and they expect bigger stuff. Then you become a grown woman and they expect a lot of stuff,
Hmm.
right? And
Yep.
so can you talk about that a second? Because I mean, people just don't understand what goes on behind some people's eyes sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it almost leaves you speechless because I feel
Yeah.
like day in and day out, it's a battle that I wish that I could do more about. Not only, for myself when I was actively an athlete, but for, people today, athletes specifically today. I know we have all these different things. Like we have like the SAC group, they, will have different mental health things, or even like, positions like Haley's, which
Yeah.
they've brought on. So that's awesome. But I think that again, because everyone's experience is so unique, especially with the mental health thing, it is one of those that the best thing that I can say is to get help. It is one of the hardest things to do. It is one of the most difficult and the most vulnerable things that someone can do is simply ask for help, like we talked about before. And again, like you said, as an athlete, you're supposed to be this, strong, rough and tough athlete that can take whatever. And it's not like that. That's not human. That's not how it's supposed to be in my eyes. My mom has always told me, from the moment that I can remember, kind of dealing with your demons, dealing with your battles is one of the most powerful things that a human being can do.
Mm.
And I'm a full believer of that. And I feel like my experience and my kind of journey has evidenced that. Um, so yeah, I actually had an assessment after the whole kind of statistics class situation in the fall of my sophomore year. So when we got back to school, that was tough. A lot of testing. I was like, it was a lot. Um, Found out that I had borderline personality disorder. I was struggling with like a reading, learning disability. Um, I had like a substance abuse issue at the time with alcohol. I was drinking a little bit too much. Oh, clearly a lot too much. So after that, oh, that I had ADHD as well, because that wasn't diagnosed when I was a kid. I don't know if it just wasn't something that presented itself or what. So all that stuff was now like, whoa. And I remember like getting in the car after I had like my little feedback session and just like crying because I was like, what? I was like, what is going on? I was like, no, 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 no. I was like, I'm okay. Like I'm
Yeah.
fine. Like this is everything is okay.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've done my whole life.
That's
And
who you're
that's
supposed to be, right?
right, exactly. And that's what if people keep telling you time and time again, oh, well, you're supposed to be rough and tough, you're supposed to be rough and tough, at one point, whether you genuinely believe that or not, you're going to believe it because people
Yeah.
keep telling you that. So it's like,
Yeah.
how many times can you hear that and think something differently?
Right.
So that was tough. I figured out different ways. I started going to therapy, started, getting extra time in class for tests or whatever it was to help me. So again, going back to those tools, I figured out, okay, now I know kind of I hate to use, what's wrong with me. I now I figured out kind of what challenges I have to face, what adversity I have to face.
Yeah.
So now, what tools can I get or use or retrieve or anything that I can use to help myself navigate through these challenges and this adversity. So I did that, ultimately was discharged from therapy going into my senior year. Um, but then, you know, my senior year was probably my best year. Absolutely loved it. I think I just really got to be me. I feel like I was comfortable with myself. I was feeling great as an athlete. I'd worked so hard. But then, you get out and again, you're in that real world. Your identity is stripped from you.
Yeah.
Basically, you're starting all over again. Without that 22 group of best friend,
Yeah.
so
You
it's
feel
like you're
alone. You're by yourself.
on your own.
Yeah.
Um, and that's tough. So I, for a while, was like, I think it's just, the transition of like getting out and, I got to figure that out. So, it took me a little time. I, got like a full-time job, whatever. Um, but then I was like, no, this is still a thing. I'm still struggling. I'm still, you know, I still don't want to go out sometimes. I still don't want to talk to people. I still don't, it's still hard for me to get out of bed. It's still, um, you know, I'm still struggling, right? So I think that for me, I was like, okay, been there, done that, but it's definitely evolved. My struggles have evolved. Those changes and those challenges have now adapted. I'm in a different place. I'm in a different spot. That evaluation that I last did was in 2019. So, yeah, September 5th, I had that last appointment. Um, I was looking through the feedback today, and as much as I want to say that, it kind of told me what I already knew, but I also newly was diagnosed with anxiety and depression, which honestly, I genuinely feel like, and I could be wrong, I don't want to speak for any athlete, but it's something that I almost feel like at times can be inevitable. Um, and it's just so overwhelming. I think that the feeling of being an athlete, the responsibilities of being an athlete, aside from everything else that you have going on in your life, because I think that there's also a lack of understanding and willingness to kind of see that aside from being an athlete, people have lives.
Yeah.
These kids, like, whenever you're in, you have a life. Like there is an outside life. So I was struggling super bad freshman year. I was in a rough relationship that I just kind of really couldn't figure out. My grandmother had passed away, and then I also felt that like tremendous guilt of like, oh, well, I can't be home to help my mom take care of her. I don't really know. Um, so aside from all that, the athlete, the school, the pressure, the okay, well, I want to have a social life, well, I want to go out, well, I want to drink, well, I want to this. You also have a life. So I think that that's what when you said, what's really behind the eyes is that's what's behind the eyes is life in what you're experiencing aside from being an athlete, which is so unique to each person and so just different in people internalize differently and experience things differently. So I think that for me, now being a little bit removed from college and it's still being, a persistent thing and kind of I'm still something that I'm figuring out is I hope that that doesn't discourage anyone from getting that help because it is so powerful to get those tools and to ask for help and reach out to the people because there's so many people who are willing in wanting to
Oh,
help.
yeah.
But again, it's like you just don't really know what's to come of it. Um, which is why I
It's
think
like you said before, the fear of the unknown.
yeah, you
Yeah.
just don't know. And
Yeah.
how are you supposed to know if, no one else really kind of talks about it? So I think it's great that, it's more of a thing, I think now.
Well, it's
But
more
it,
acceptable now,
yes,
you
yes,
know?
point, very good point. Because I think that not that it wasn't ever unacceptable, but it's being more welcomed and more encouraged, and um, it's so necessary
Well,
because,
I can tell you 40 years ago,
mm,
it wasn't acceptable.
yeah, and
It was
that's
a different world back then.
yeah,
And if a player athlete brought this stuff up to a coach,
hmm
there was something wrong with you.
yep,
Go sit over there. You're exiled or you're weird or what or whatever.
hmm
And it took a lot of years have gone by since I played. And I would say in the last 5 years, it's really become okay to
Hmm.
let people know how you feel
Yeah.
as an
Okay that you're
athlete.
not okay. Yeah.
Right.
Okay that you're not okay.
Right.
Um, for sure. And
Yeah.
I think that for me at least, my thought always too, aside from the unknown, was like, well, okay, well, I don't want coach to think that I'm not like capable of playing. I don't want coach
Right.
to bench me,
Right.
or I don't want coach to
Exactly.
think that I can't perform because I'm
Exactly.
struggling. So I was like, I'm just not going to say anything.
Right.
Which
Ex-
ultimately made it
But
worse.
that, but that's exactly the point. Is they're
Yeah.
so afraid of not playing, and if they
Hmm.
say something, the coach is gonna look at them different. But then you're
Yeah.
afraid your friends are gonna look at you different, your
Yep.
teammates are gonna look at you different,
Yeah.
you know.
It is tough.
And here's another thing: 40 years ago, you would have never come on this show to
Nope.
talk.
Sure wouldn't have.
So it takes people with courage like you know, who are dealing with personal things to share it because I mean it's harder than any workout you've ever gone through.
Yeah.
It's harder
Yeah.
than any game you've ever played. It's harder than any concussion you've ever had.
Hmm.
To sit here and tell your story about what you're personally dealing with, to share it with other men or women, athletes, so they can understand one day, hey, you know what? I'm not alone. It's not just me,
Yeah.
you
And
know, and that's
that's
huge.
the driving factor, truly. Because
Yeah,
like, do I want to be super vulnerable? Absolutely not. I don't really know. I don't know if I've met a person that's like, oh, I love to be vulnerable. I love to
yeah,
just give all of my information and whatnot. But for me, it is larger than the whatever anxiety I feel or like nervousness of like, okay, well, I'm just putting this out there. The fact that there are people who struggle just like I did, and if not, maybe worse or even less, or whatever the case is that it could ultimately help someone who was me, who was a freshman year Kaya, or who, sees parts of themselves in me or whatever it is. So I think that that overwhelming thing of like, oh, geez, the hardness that you're talking about of like, okay, well, I'm going to get on here and, express and kind of share my story and my, way of life. Uh, is less than, or it kind of takes a back seat to, okay, well, yeah, but it could help the next person, or it could
yeah.
help the next incoming athlete, or someone who's active, playing and whatnot. So um I think it's great. I really do. So
I
I'm
got
grateful for the opportunity.
I have a recommendation for you.
Mm,
You ready for this one?
yes, I think.
I think you should call Haley
Yeah.
and I think you should say, hey, listen, I want to come talk to the team.
Mm,
How cool
yeah.
would that be?
Yeah,
If
that'd be crazy.
that would
That'd be
be
crazy.
talk about impacting and helping, because when they see their own, one of their own
Mm,
come back,
yeah.
they're like, you're like Superwoman to them.
Yeah. And it's new, it's fully new, like new coach. There's new
Yeah.
sets of, I think maybe I played with a couple of the girls when I was a
Okay.
freshman. I mean a senior, but yeah. And I'd love to catch up with her too, especially about her experience
Oh
because,
my God.
what she's doing is
Holy smokes. You know,
crazy.
she
So
was on the
happy for
show.
her.
She was on the show a couple months ago. And again, every time I have a different athlete on the show, I don't know what to expect,
Right, right, right.
right?
You're
You
just
know,
like, yeah.
and these stories that, and I hate to say the word story, these life
No,
events,
yeah.
the life events that you guys come on and talk about, it's just amazing stuff. And it's not,
Yeah.
it's amazing how you handle it
Mm,
and how you dealt with it, how you overcome it, and who you become from it, and that you're willing to talk about it and share it with other people. Like
yeah.
that is so cool,
Yeah.
you
Power.
know?
And I think that like I said, I was grateful and blessed enough to have the opportunity to have that platform because again, athletes, especially at that high level, have such a huge platform. Right? It's so different. It's such, evolved now, especially with like, you know, and a lot or and yeah, a name likely name, image, and like NIL.
NIL. Yep.
It's evolved so much. So I also believe that part of that potential that I feel within myself, to reach that potential also I have this obligation or like a responsibility within that potential to use my platform and
Mm.
use my experiences and my ability and what I've learned, like I said, to offer that to other people, to allow them to reach their full potential. Because I do believe that helping others reach their full potential is part of me
Yeah.
reaching my full potential. Um, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well,
So,
that's my next question. I got a couple more.
yeah, yeah.
So, what advice would you give current athletes about preparing you said before how to prepare for transition from high school to college,
Hmm.
right? Well, now, what advice can you give the college senior, athlete who's preparing for life after the game?
Yeah, yeah. Oof, that one's tough. So I think that the biggest thing is stick to what you know, which of course everyone's gonna be like, oh, you know, well, well, in my case, I know softball, I know sports. But stick to those characteristics, those tools that you may have, used before, those routines, those, whatever. Allow those to carry into, this kind of next stage, right? This next journey. So, a lot of the things that I learned in college, so the planning my days out, the setting up my clothes, the having a routine from the what foot I would put my sock on first. So bringing that stuff into, so for me, those are tools that I can use in any realm, whether it's I tomorrow decide that I want to be a nurse, or the next day I decide that I want to start a family, whatever it is. They're tools that you can bring with you. Tools that you learn as an athlete are like no other. I think that they're nothing that they can't be taught. They can't, you got to experience it, and you gain them by yourself, and you gain them from working with others and learning from others. Um, so to bring those tools with you and use those and apply them to literally every single aspect outside of, your sport, uh in your career and whatnot, and being a student. Um, and then the physical portion, because I feel like that's also important to touch on, is to be patient with yourself. Know that you're not that same athlete that, is doing 4 or 5 days in the off season, pushing big weight in the gym, which you 100% can. But, I think to be realistic with yourself and to be patient and give yourself that time to adapt is huge. I was super hard on myself doing that adaptation or
Mm,
that transition rather. And I wish I had been a little bit gentler on myself and patient and understanding that, this is big. It is a transition, in my opinion, like no other. You likely won't ever experience that type of transition again, because most of us have played since we were little kids, and now it's something that's kind of not there anymore.
yep.
So, you know, sticking to your roots, keeping those tools that ground you and, make life easier and allow you to reach that potential.
Yeah.
Those are the biggest things I would say to take along with you going forward.
Awesome. Awesome advice. What would you do differently? Anything?
I think just in totality, like about my whole experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think first what comes to mind, I would have worked harder earlier in my career. So like when I was, so like I said, my senior year, going into my senior year, I was committed. I was, and not that I, wasn't committed for, but I think more to the, okay, Kaya, let's put the work in because you know for a fact that the work that you put in now will evidence itself in season. And I think it took me a little while to learn that. Because, I would get that summer packet and be like, I'll do this, I'll work out. But I wasn't consistent. I didn't have intent. I didn't have purpose. I would be in the gym going into my senior year and, during breaks and whatever, literally thinking to myself, like, you have to pull out this rep right now because that girl who is stealing or, going from second to home, like, you have to be able to throw her out. Or, in a case that you have to bunt or something, you have to make that into a base hit. So I was putting more intent and thought into my training, which I think is super important, but I feel like I did it a little bit too late. Um, and I also would say my nutrition, I could get away with, probably since like the age of like 5, I could get away with eating whatever I wanted. Which as much as I'm grateful for it, I also, I mean like physically I could get away with it and still perform, at least for my understanding, to the same extent. But when I really started learning and seeing how much what you're putting into your body is so such a reflection of, mental stat. Like
Yeah.
I would really not eat breakfast, but then I made it a point every single morning. I was eating something, whether it was we had lift at 6 a.m., we had lift at 5 o'clock at night. I knew I was eating something. I was putting good food into my body. I was nourishing my body because I think that's super important, especially for female athletes. It is one of the most difficult, and I think that, it's talked about, but I think maybe not so enough, and it's different from sport to sport. But it can be tough. Body image, what we're putting into our body, being around girls who might look different, or who look like that we want to look like or not, or, you know, social media today is absolutely insane with
Oh yeah.
these unrealistic expectations of what we're supposed to look like. Um, Especially like for the younger generation that would now be coming up into college. So I think that when I finally realized like food is strength, because like I'm fueling my body in really learning that, I think was huge for me. But again, I wish that I had learned it a little bit sooner, um, and just kind of put more into that. So I think those honestly would be my two biggest things.
Yeah.
Other than that, I know a lot of people say they try to live without regrets. Um, and I do, I try to live without regrets because I do believe that most things kind of, like I said, it's God's plan. I'm trying to follow that. And I believe in that. So, um, yeah, just more intent training, training hard, training with purpose, really being committed to the workouts and what you're doing and giving it your all and pushing yourself. Um, and, of course, asking for help maybe a little bit sooner. But
Yeah.
I think we all kind of, think about that sometimes. I don't really know what we would consider to be soon enough. So
It's never
whenever,
too soon.
yeah, exactly. So, whenever you're ready, the
You
world
know,
is ready for you. So,
and I think about what you just said. Hey, as a senior, you worked harder.
mm,
Well, I think let's remember, as a senior, you were 22. As a
hmm
freshman, you're 18.
yep,
You're a lot more mature. You're mentally stronger, physically stronger. You have more experience behind you, and you know what needs to be done.
yep. And
As
I
a freshman,
appreciated it more.
yeah,
Way
right.
more.
Yeah, because you
Way
know what it
more.
takes to be out there. As a
Yep.
freshman, like you said, you show up and you think, well, I was great where I was. I'll be great here too, and I don't
Right.
need to do all that extra work. That's
Exactly.
that's great advice. Awesome advice.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's the thing. You can get away with it. Most
Yeah,
of the time, you can get away with it in high school. Same thing with
yeah,
school. I just kind of flew by in high school. I
yeah.
got away with stuff. I really wasn't like I wasn't a bad student, but I wasn't like this great, like I was studying every night, making sure my homework was always on time. But, yeah, it's important.
Yeah,
So,
without a doubt. So what does the future look like? Career wise, what are you excited about?
honestly, well, maybe not this economy, but I'm excited about like having a house. I am. That's
Okay.
something that I always think about. I'm just super excited about like having my own space that I take pride in. Of course, like, I have an apartment that I obviously take pride in and I love and whatnot. But um I don't know. I think that for me, having like my own home, and taking care of it and upkeeping it is one of those things that for me will be like a representation of like, wow, you worked really hard and got here. Um, but it's been a little tough lately, but we're getting there.
All right.
So there's that. And then also, I don't, that's a tough question because I feel like there's so much out there for me, but I'm just not quite sure about it yet. I think that I still have a lot to come across. I think that there's so much more of that quote unquote like potential that I'm destined to experience, to kind of uncover. I always kind of have this like underlying dream of like, having some sort of like a program or a group or whatever it is, going back to that whole criminal justice side of things, or, what I do now is reintegrating people back into society. But I also think that, my thought about that goes back to like when you're an athlete and you get out of college, you're reintegrating back into society. You
Oh yeah.
have, you're not a convicted felon, but you're reintegrating back into society because college for 4 years, especially as an athlete, you are in your whole world. Like that
It's
is its
prison. It's
own,
just like
yeah.
prison.
Yeah, because basically, but a little
Yeah.
more fun, maybe.
Yeah. Right.
Um, you are just right back into, okay, this is real. I got bills now. I have to go to work every day. I got, things to take care of. So I think, um, as much as I say, maybe I'm not sure or whatever, maybe eventually at some point a family is like in my brain, but then I'm also like, I don't know, because I think a lot going back to that whole mental health thing too is like I fully believe that I'm someone who uh I've always thought to myself, because I've never had this like huge desire to like have children or anything like that, but I've always thought to myself that I also have this like deep purpose to extend these things that I've learned and everything that I can offer to like my own. Um, which is, a little bit more deeper and kind of away from the athletic side of things. Well, not really, because that too, like I would love to do all the things that I wish that I maybe have done would have done differently, whether it's like recruiting process or learning things differently. Like if I have a child and they, want to play whatever sport, like I can relay those things or things that
Oh
I've
yeah.
learned about the recruiting process. So that seems super cool to me, future wise. But honestly, going forward, I want to work hard. I want to continue to just, try and reach that full potential for myself physically, mentally, emotionally, career wise. Um, and, continue to find those tools that make it easier for me to do that. So, like I said, I had that, evaluation. So now, okay, now I know kind of what's developed since I had the last one in 2019. So I had the conversation earlier today with my mom of like, all right, well, now we kind of have this info. Let's see what we can do, to help you work through those things and what tools we can use to get you through these challenges. So
Yeah.
it is a constant, I don't want to call it a game, but it's a constant cycle. You know what I mean?
Work in
It's
progress. It's a
a
work in
work in
progress.
progress. And I'm a firm believer that it always will be, and that's okay. Because there are days when, it's tough and you're struggling and you're not, you can't get out of bed. But then there are also days where it's like, wow, I sometimes I'm driving to work or I'm taking my dog out or whatever it is, and I think to myself like, wow, I'm so grateful. That's one of the biggest things that I practice in my life is gratitude because I just I'm so grateful to think about everything that I've been given in life, everything that's been given to me, everything that I've worked for. Um, Gratitude is one of the biggest things that I, idolize and practice, and I'm just super thankful for the fact that, you know, I've been given what I've been given in all kind of aspects.
It's awesome. I mean,
So
that's well, I can guarantee your future's bright.
thank you.
There's a
Thank
lot
you.
going on, a lot going on,
Thanks.
and like we just said, yeah, I mean, you can literally count the months you've been out of college.
Yeah, crazy to think about, but
You know, you know,
yeah,
and but Kaya, this has been great.
yeah.
Um, is there anything else I haven't asked you? Anything else we haven't talked about that you think everybody should hear before we hang up?
Not, well, I feel like there is, but I got to think about it. So let me see.
Because we covered a lot.
We did. We sure did.
Yeah.
Um, Honestly, we kind of already talked about this, but be patient with yourself. If I could, I tell people that all the time, be kind, be patient to yourself, as simple as it seems. Sometimes I have to tell myself that I have to look myself literally in the mirror and be like, Kaya, be patient with yourself, be kind, because this world is relentless sometimes.
Mm,
It really is. And as maybe negative as it sounds, if you kind of don't fight for yourself and stick up for yourself and find the ways to navigate through those challenges, it can eat you up.
yeah.
And I think that when you find those tools, it's so powerful. And it's like, okay, well, I can navigate my way through life now. Because it is. The world is relentless, and sometimes it really doesn't care if you're struggling or if you, uh, are having a tough day or you had a bad day hitting BP, or the world doesn't really care.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds a little bit negative, but I think
It's
that
true.
it's true.
Yeah.
It's real.
The world doesn't wait for you.
Yeah, the world will keep going.
Yeah.
So you got to keep going for yourself, and practicing happiness. I idolize that as well. Being grateful and just trying to be happy, doing everything that I can in my world to, be content, be happy with everything that's kind of going on behind the scenes, and be vulnerable,
Yeah.
truly, because it really does help, and people do want to help immensely,
Oh my God.
but you have to allow them.
Once you find out they want to help, it makes you feel a heck of a lot better.
Yeah. And then it's like, okay, well, where do I go from here?
Yeah.
But it is like no other. So that's why I also like when Haley got that job and they created that position, I was like, wow. I was like, this girl's gonna do so good.
Yeah.
So I'm super happy for her and I gotta definitely call her up and yeah. So this is awesome. This
Yeah.
is so great. I'm so grateful. I appreciate the opportunity because, like I said, it's kind of one of those things that I almost feel is like a responsibility of
Yeah.
mine, an obligation. So, um, allow, I think this is so great. The you're giving people the opportunity to kind of share their journeys
Yeah.
in their whys and hows. Um, and that's huge because I think that if I had maybe listened to something like this when I was going into school or in the middle of it, like really just in it, struggling, I'd be like, wow, like you're not going crazy.
Yeah.
You're not a terrible athlete. You're not like the worst
Yeah.
student. So
You're not as
I
bad
think
as you think you are.
exactly. So
Yeah.
I'm very grateful. So I appreciate it. And I would encourage everybody, to listen, to come on, to share their whys in their house. So.
Yeah. Well, Kai, this has been great. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that you took the time out of your life to share your life with all the other athletes that are out there listening. And I don't want to wish your life away, right? But
Yeah.
I can't wait to see all the things you accomplish in
Thank you.
your near future. But because like I said it 5, 6 times already, you've only been out of college months. You can
Yeah.
count the months, even though 2 years or less,
Hmm.
and there's so much more in front of you, so much more to
There
do. So
is.
I wish you the best.
Thank you so much. I
Thank you for
appreciate it.
being here, and
Thank you.
we'll get you back on here. Maybe we'll get a couple of your other teammates on here, and we can
Yeah,
talk in a
yeah, that'd be
group session.
great.
We can do a
That'd
group
be
chat.
great. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, that'd be crazy.
Oh, we
We're
had a
all
lot of
crazy
fun.
up there in Maine. I don't know what Coach Coots is, but he got a bunch of crazy girls. But
You
but
got to
good
be
people
crazy.
though.
You got to be crazy to
Exactly.
go up there.
Yep, and good people though.
That's it.
So I
That's
I
it.
loved it. So this is awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks.